To discuss the sensitive procedure and potential political ramifications, I'm now joined live by journalist James Corbett. Mr. Corbett, controversy over Arafat's death has continued for 8 years. Why is it now that his body has been exhumed and an investigation is being held?
Well, it's being exhumed because of this new study, as you say, from Al Jazeera that shows that polonium may have been a likely candidate in his poisoning, and this is the first time that specific element has been identified as a potential poisoning agent in this case. And at the time in 2004, it would have been somewhat unusual to have tested for polonium, but of course we saw just 2 years later Alexander Litvinenko, a fierce critic of the Kremlin, being poisoned with that exact substance. And of course at the time there was a lot of questions about whether the ex-KGB had been involved in that or what have you, but Litvinenko of course was poisoned with polonium, and now we're testing that for Arafat. But it's questionable what political changes will really result from this, since the vast majority of Palestinians have believed since Arafat's death that he was assassinated by Israel.
How impartial will this investigation be?
Well, the actual exhumation was conducted by a Palestinian doctor. That was the only doctor that was allowed to actually touch the body. There were Swiss, French, and I believe Russian witnesses there as well, though, to oversee the process. But the only person actually touching and collecting the samples was a Palestinian doctor, and all three of the witnesses, the Swiss, the French, and the Russians, are going to be able to get some of those samples so that they can test them in their own labs. So it is going to be a fairly independent process, but it is questionable to what extent they'll be able to come up with some definitive answer about how this agent was actually delivered to Arafat and in what circumstances.
Now, the Al Jazeera media network is at the heart of the investigation. Why is it getting so involved?
That is a good question. There are multiple different possible answers to that. Of course, there are the Qatari connections with the Al Jazeera network, and we do know that Qatar has been interested in what's happening in Palestine lately, of course, with the Emir of Qatar coming to Palestine just shortly before the recent Israeli aggression, offering money and arms, etc. So there's definitely seems to be some type of meddling going on in the region, but whether or not that's related to this particular investigation is unclear. Of course, Al Jazeera ended up being the network getting the actual personal belongings of Arafat, from which they were able to conduct the tests. So the fact that they were able to get their hands on those personal belongings, I think, were the decisive factor in this.
I guess everybody's now going to be asking, what kind of fallout do you predict if it's confirmed that the late Palestinian leader was indeed poisoned?
Yes, that is the question, and I think that really there's no conceivable way that this will have any real political fallout, because once again the vast majority of Palestinians have always assumed that Israel assassinated Arafat. If this goes on to confirm that, it kind of throws in the face of the Palestinians their helplessness in a situation like this. And this was underscored actually just earlier this month when Israel came out and for the first time military censors allowed information about the killing of Fatah's co-founder, not just Yasser Arafat, but also Khalil al-Wazir was a co-founder of Fatah. He was assassinated by Israel in 1988, and for 25 years, basically, there's been this secrecy over the killing, and finally, just earlier this month, Israel has cleared that, and the actual interviews with the commandos who carried out that assassination have been published. So now it's openly on the record admitted that the co-founder of Fatah was killed by the Israelis, but again, nothing has resulted politically, and it's unclear whether or not Palestine will have any ability to bring any sort of proceedings against Israel if it is found that Arafat was poisoned. And even if it is found, it's not clear that it's going to be able to be pinned on any particular person in the Israeli government, so who would the charges be brought against? It's a question of really what type of political leverage the Palestinians have in this case, and the answer, unfortunately, as usual, is almost none.
James Corbett, we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you very much for your time. Editor of the Corbett Report, joining us here on RT.